Mr. Murali Pillai.
Question 32, please.
Mr. Speaker, sir, foreign domestic workers, FTWs, incur expenses in their home countries when they seek opportunities to work overseas. For instance, they may be required to pay their employment agency, in short EA, a fee. And this cost is typically paid by their employers on their behalf in the form of advanced salary payments facilitated by the EA. To protect employers and FTWs, EAs are required by law to fully disclose the terms and conditions of their services, including the amount that the FTWs are charged and their refund policies on advanced salary payments by employers. In the event that the employer terminates the FTW employment contract early and sends the FTW back to the EA, or the FTW commits an offense and has to be repatriated, the EA would usually refund any outstanding advance salary payment made by the employer. MOM expects EAs to fully discharge their duties and obligations to employers and FTWs and safeguards the interests of these parties. In addition to conducting regular inspections, we also act on feedback received and will not hesitate to take irresponsible or errant EAs to task.
Mr. Murali Pillai.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank the Honourable Senior Parliamentary Secretary for the answer. I have a supplementary question. It's really in relation to allocation of risk. In a situation where a foreign domestic worker leaves earlier than anticipated and where a family has already made advance payment to an employment agency which collects it for a foreign employment agency, could the ministry consider perhaps the employment agency issuing a bond such that if such a situation happens, at least the family can recoup the losses through the exercise of its rights under the bond?
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member, Mr. Murali Pillai, for the suggestion on the bond. Let the MOM team think through the pros and cons of this suggestion. At this point in time, allow me to assure Mr. Murali Pillai that the employers of FTW have alternative options and also avenues for recourse. For example, although most of the employers generally prefer the advanced salary payments because in the first place they hope that the FTW will stay with them for the entire contract, right? But there will be some employers who, for various reasons, do not prefer the advanced salary payments, and these employers can approach EAs that are able to customize a package to suit their needs. So there are varying practices in the market. Now, to Mr. Murali Pillai's point, now to protect employers and FTWs, MOM requires the EA to clearly state their refund policies in the service agreement. For example, if the FTW terminates the employment prematurely, the employers should check the contract that they signed with the EA. And because the contract will lay out whether and under what circumstances they will get full or partial refund. And I want to assure Mr. Murali Pillai that we take this very seriously. Every single case that surfaced to MOM will be followed up and investigated thoroughly. Since 2016, MOM has investigated and taken actions against 2 EAs that has failed to state their refund policies.
Mr. Murali Pillai.
Mr. Speaker, I have a clarification, or rather a supplementary question, a further supplementary question. The suggestion I made in relation to provision of a bond is to deal with the function of the employment agency as a collecting body, as opposed to this usual situation envisaged in a contract where the employment agency is really basically seeking to be paid its own fees. In a context of the employment agency being a collection agency, perhaps the risks associated with the monies being given to the employment agency only to be delivered to a foreign employment agency can be dealt with through the bond system.
I want to thank the member for his supplementary question. Now, he rightly described it as a risk, and a bond instrument will also mean that there will be some fee income or fee charges which may inadvertently be passed on to the consumer, in this case the FTW employer. So we need to think through some of these new measures very carefully. I want to say that MOM, we have put in place limits that regulates what an EA can charge the FTW, and that's important because that may then manifest itself as advanced salary payment, right? And EAs are not allowed to collect fees that exceeds FTW's monthly salary for each year of contracted service. Now, EAs who flout this rule may be prosecuted or even have their licenses revoked. And we can issue warning letters or even composition fines to egregious EA. Now, the example that Mr. Murali Pillai highlighted, the EAs should not function as a collection agent, right? And while MOM will undertake all the necessary efforts to prohibit our Singapore-based EAs from charging the FTW beyond the cap fee, we must also explain that we have no jurisdiction over the EA in the home country of the FTW. Having said that, if the case that Mr. Murali Pillai's resident is facing, if you could share with us the information, that would be most helpful. We will then be able to investigate this further. And if we find any suspicious or irregular fee practices, we can follow up with the relevant embassy and enlist their help so that we can stop the malpractice at source.